There comes a point in life when the world seems to turn its eyes directly on you, waiting for your downfall. Every mistake you've ever made suddenly feels amplified. Every rumor grows louder than the truth, and your name is dragged through the mud as if redemption were no longer possible. In those moments, it feels like you are drowning in judgment, unable to escape the whispers, the headlines, or the pointed fingers. And yet, this is also the exact moment when the deepest decision of your life presents itself. Will you give in and let the world write your ending? Or will you fight to prove that one chapter does not define your entire story? Scandals, failures, and betrayals are not reserved for public figures. They happen to all of us in different forms. Maybe it is the betrayal of a friend, the collapse of a business, or a personal failure that feels too heavy to carry. When these storms hit, most people retreat, hoping that if they stay silent long enough, the world will forget. But the truth is, silence rarely heals a broken reputation or a wounded soul. What heals is resilience. What heals is the courage to stand tall when the ground beneath you is shaking. Survival is not the absence of pain, it is the choice to walk through the fire and come out on the other side, forged into something stronger. It is easy to crumble when people are watching you fall. It is easy to believe the lies told about you, to believe you are no more than your worst mistake. But survival requires a different perspective. It demands that you look in the mirror and see beyond the cracks, beyond the bruises, beyond the shame. You must see the possibility of rebuilding, the chance to rise again, and the belief that even ashes can give birth to something new. A phoenix is not born in comfort. It is born in fire, and the same applies to human strength. It does not grow in times of applause, but in times of silence, criticism, and pain. When everything seems to crumble, the world expects you to surrender. That is why survival is so powerful. Because it defies expectation. It tells the world that you are more than the scandal, more than the whispers, more than the failure. Survival is not about pretending the pain doesn't exist. It is about acknowledging the pain, walking with it, and still choosing to move forward. It is about showing yourself and everyone else that the darkness was not the end of your story, but the beginning of your rebirth. And so, when the world's eyes are on you, waiting for you to break, do not let them witness your collapse. Let them witness your courage. Let them witness how a person can fall, stumble, and still stand taller than before. From scandal to survival, from chaos to clarity, the story of resilience is not just about saving your name. It is about reclaiming your life. Sometimes life corners us into choices we never imagined making. A single piece of paper, a few lines of ink, a contract. It can hold the power to alter everything. To most people, a contract is nothing more than a legal agreement, a business deal, or a safeguard. But when life takes unexpected turns, that very contract can become the bridge between ruin and redemption. It can turn into the shield that protects a career, the rope that pulls someone out of sinking waters, or the test that forces two people to discover who they truly are. And while the world sees only signatures and clauses, the truth is far deeper. The power of a contract is not in the rules it writes, but in the lives it changes. Imagine agreeing to something that feels impossible, maybe even absurd. At first, it feels like compromise, maybe even defeat. A way of surviving, nothing more. But survival has a way of revealing truths we would have never uncovered otherwise. A contract born from necessity can push people into situations they never asked for. Situations that strip away the walls they've built around themselves. When two lives intertwine under an agreement, no matter how false or staged it may seem, it begins to test boundaries, challenge emotions, and shake the very beliefs we hold about ourselves and others. That is the silent power hidden behind what looks like nothing more than paper. At first glance, a contract cannot create love, cannot inspire trust, cannot build respect. And yet, under its quiet weight, those very things can begin to form. Why? Because rules create proximity, and proximity creates possibility. When two people are forced to live, act, or even pretend under the same roof, they begin to see beyond the mask. They start noticing the cracks, the moments of vulnerability, the truth that slips out when the performance ends. And slowly, what started as an arrangement of convenience becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the other person, but also the hidden parts of themselves. The power of a contract is not about control, it is about transformation. It forces us to confront discomfort, to face the truths we try to run from. In the beginning, it might feel like a cage, a binding force with no freedom. But as time unfolds, that same cage can become the very framework within which growth happens. Just as a seed needs soil to grow, sometimes we need boundaries, even forced ones, to uncover what lies dormant within us. What began as a condition to save face, protect reputation, or pay off debts, slowly begins to reveal something greater, the possibility of real change. And perhaps the greatest irony is this: what begins as fake can often expose what is most real. A contract cannot command the heart, but it can create the stage upon which the heart reveals itself. It cannot force affection, but it can break down the barriers that hide it. Sometimes the power of a contract is not that it binds two names together, but that it awakens something neither of them knew they carried within. That is the unseen power. When necessity transforms into destiny. Hate is one of the easiest emotions a human being can feel. It requires no effort to look at someone's flaws, magnify them, and decide they are unworthy of kindness. It is simple to mock, to judge, to dismiss. Hate feeds the ego, because it convinces us that we are better, cleaner, or stronger than the person we despise. But life has a curious way of testing what we think we know. It takes the very person we can't stand, the one we label as arrogant, broken, or undeserving, and places them in our path as a responsibility. Suddenly, hate is no longer an indulgence we can afford. Suddenly, the person we swore never to care about becomes tied to our choices, our conscience, and our humanity. Responsibility changes the weight of everything. When the well-being of someone else is in our hands, even someone we dislike, we can no longer shrug and walk away. Their pain begins to overlap with our decisions. Their struggle becomes a shadow that follows us. And as much as we might resist, we cannot ignore them. This is the moment when hate begins to crack. The lines between enemy and ally blur. Not because the past disappears, but because responsibility demands something greater than resentment. It demands action. It is easy to hate at a distance. When someone is far away, when they are just a headline, a rumor, or a face we do not know, we can despise them with comfort. But when hate is forced into proximity, when we share the same air, the same table, the same roof, we begin to see the person behind the image. We begin to notice small details, the way they carry their own wounds, the silent battles they never reveal, the quiet humanity that no mask can hide forever. And once we see that, true hate becomes harder to maintain. Because no matter how stubborn we are, human to human, we recognize pieces of ourselves in those we once despised. Responsibility teaches empathy in ways nothing else can. It softens the sharpness of hate and replaces it with reluctant understanding. At first, it feels uncomfortable. We tell ourselves we don't care, that we are only doing what we must, that their fate doesn't matter. But somewhere between the duties we perform and the choices we make for them, the heart begins to shift. We may not call it love, we may not even call it respect, but we begin to see them as human, and that single recognition, that even those we despise are fighting battles of their own, is enough to break hate's hold on us. The truth is, responsibility transforms us more than it transforms the person we carry. It forces us to rise above our own bitterness and act with integrity even when we don't want to. It demands growth. And in that process, we learn that hate was never strength, it was weakness. Strength is not in clinging to resentment, but in shouldering responsibility, in protecting those we once rejected, and in discovering that the human heart is far more capable of compassion than hate would ever allow. We all wear a mask. Some of us put it on the moment we step out of bed, while others save it for when the world comes knocking. The mask is polished, flawless, and convincing. It tells people we are strong when we are breaking, confident when we are unsure, happy when we are drowning in silence. It is easier to let the world believe the illusion than to expose the raw truth that lies underneath. But no matter how carefully it is crafted, a mask is heavy, and the longer we wear it, the more it begins to suffocate us. The world applauds masks. Society loves the image of perfection, the smiling couple, the untouchable leader, the charming star. We are rewarded for keeping up appearances, for hiding our pain, for pretending everything is under control. But beneath the applause is a dangerous emptiness. Because when the mask becomes too convincing, people stop seeing the real person behind it. They stop asking questions, stop offering comfort, and eventually we begin to lose sight of ourselves. We forget where the mask ends and where we begin. And in that loss, we risk becoming strangers to our own truth. Yet masks cannot last forever. Pressure reveals cracks. Life has a way of testing the walls we build around our hearts, and eventually, the truth seeps out. Maybe it happens in anger, when words escape we never meant to share. Maybe it happens in sorrow, when tears fall in front of the very people we tried to fool. Or maybe it happens in love, when someone looks past the mask and sees the trembling soul we have tried so desperately to hide. The mask shatters not in grand, dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones. When someone cares enough to notice the difference between performance and reality. And what is left when the mask breaks? Vulnerability, exposure, fear, but also freedom. Because beneath the mask lies the part of us that is most alive. The flaws, the insecurities, the stories we carry in silence. These are not weaknesses, they are the fingerprints of our humanity. To remove the mask is terrifying, but it is also the only way to be truly known. Without it, every relationship is shallow, every success feels hollow, and every victory rings empty. With it gone, we allow others to love us not for who we pretend to be, but for who we are. The mask we wear is not evil. It protects us in moments of survival. But if we cling to it forever, it becomes a prison. The real strength lies in daring to take it off, in saying, "This is me, imperfect, fragile, but real." That courage changes everything. It transforms false applause into genuine connection. It turns loneliness into belonging. And it reminds us that no matter how broken we feel inside, the world does not need our mask. It needs our truth. There are moments in life when what begins as pretend starts to blur into reality. At first, it is nothing more than a performance, a smile practiced in front of cameras, words spoken with the right tone, gestures calculated to impress. We tell ourselves it's all for show, that none of it matters, that when the curtain falls we will walk away untouched. But the human heart is not so easily fooled. Pretending requires closeness, and closeness awakens feelings we never meant to feel. Somewhere between the rehearsed laughter and the staged conversations, something real begins to take root. It is a strange experience when the lines between falsehood and truth begin to vanish. You start by playing a part, keeping walls high and rules firm. No feelings, no trust, no vulnerability. But walls are not indestructible. Day by day, the mask slips. A moment of genuine kindness, a glance that lingers too long, a silence that feels more comfortable than words. These small cracks in the performance let reality seep through. And suddenly, the role you thought you were playing begins to feel less like an act and more like a reflection of who you are becoming. Pretending teaches us something important. The heart does not care about contracts or conditions. It does not follow the script we write. When we open ourselves, even unwillingly, the heart notices details that logic wants to ignore. It notices the pain in another person's eyes, the sacrifices they make silently, the softness behind their sharp edges. We begin to care, not because the agreement demands it, but because our humanity demands it. And when that happens, the act is no longer an act. It is the beginning of something true. But this shift is not without fear. The question always arises, what if the other person is still pretending? What if what feels real to me is still fake to them? That fear keeps us guarded, hesitant to admit how deeply the charade has changed us. Yet the risk is part of the transformation. Love, trust, and connection always carry risk. Pretending only delays the inevitable that the heart, once awakened, cannot go back to sleep. When pretend becomes real, we are faced with a choice. We can run, clinging to the safety of the act, convincing ourselves that none of it mattered. Or we can embrace the reality that something genuine has grown in the most unexpected of places. And often, the bravest thing we can do is to stop performing, to stop hiding and to say, "This is no longer for show. This is who I am, and this is what I feel." Because in the end, what began as a lie may reveal the deepest truth. That connection cannot be faked forever. It demands to be real, and when it arrives, it changes everything.